Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, Parler, and Instagram. And of course, be sure to visit www.mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
So you've got a visitor at your place?
Yeah, some English woman's renting a cottage.
Yeah, well, you know who she is.
I don't know what you're expected to find here.
I'm not a journalist.
And what are you?
A mother. My son's body was never found.
We were supposed to harvest that very field the day after the accident. But now we never will. I talk to Violet all the time. Is that what you're doing? Out in the fields at night? Violet! Shh. They are all angels. And they don't ever leave us.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 311. Out now on Netflix is Sweet River, an Australian horror mystery that stars Lisa Kay as Hannah, a mother who returns to the town of Billings to investigate the abduction of her 4-year-old son, who is presumed dead. Once there, she finds the town in suspended mourning and at the mercy of the ghosts from a tragic past. A haunting, creepy exploration into grief and parenthood wrapped in a murder mystery, Sweet River is sure to stir the souls of those who will watch it. And joining me now on the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is the director of Sweet River, Justin McMillan. Justin, I thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on board.
So your background is in documentary filmmaking, especially like the Storm Surfer movies. You did 3 of them. And now you're moving into with your first narrative feature. Interestingly, though, your first feature is with horror movies. What was the idea to jump into that particular genre, and how did The Quiet Place, which is a film that was released a few years back, how did that really influence the approach of the film? Because I heard that had a major influence on you in regards to tone of this movie.
Yeah, well, I was approached by a producer friend of mine who'd recently moved to Byron Bay, where I'd been living for 10 years. And he just said, listen, I've had a bunch of projects fall over. What can we make for this price around this area that has to be in this genre? And I was like, oh, how come it has to be in that sort of horror genre? And he was just like, well, this is a straight sort of sales play for me. There's a really good chance that it'll get picked up and it'll sell if it's in this genre. And it wasn't really something that I liked. I did like some sort of horror thriller movies, but not so much horror. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let me sort of investigate it a little bit more. And then when John Krasinski's Quiet Place came out, I just loved it, and I just loved the tone of that film, and I just loved, the whole film was just about a father and a mother trying to keep their children alive in a world that has been turned upside down. So I was so into it, and I just loved it, and I knew that they would have a lot more money than what we had to make Sweet River, but it really influenced the story that I wrote, and I really wanted the film to have an emotional feeling to it. And I'm a father of 3 myself, and I just kind of drew on a lot of the biggest fears that we all have as parents is obviously the safety of our children, and that was something for me that it's really easy to write about that stuff. And the more I kind of got into it, I wanted it to have a different edge, like The Quiet Place has creatures. I wanted this film to have something that was a little bit unexpected, but semi-plausible. And that was quite hard. It's quite hard to structure that in the right way. But that was the idea behind the ingredients of the story. And you mentioned Storm Surfers before, and like even though that was documentary, but myself and the co-director Chris Neelius that I made that doc with, we were really passionate about the audience leaving the film with something like an emotional connection to the characters and feeling like they'd taken something from the film. It wasn't just an action extravaganza, and we achieved that. And we had a lot of people in Toronto Film Festival sort of saying to us that they really loved it for that reason. And I sort of made a little promise to myself at that time, saying if I was ever going to make anything, I wanted to stick to those rules. I wanted the audience to take something from the film and feel that they might have learned a bit from it, or it's affected them at least in some way. And that's what I really strive for in this picture, because I knew we didn't have enough money to wow anybody in effects or anything like that. It was just a really honest little film, and shot over 17 days. So it was just like, well, what do we have? And let's just farm that really well. And that was really good actors with really good performances. And I'm really happy with what we achieved with that amount of money in that time period. It was a struggle. It was a real baptism of fire for me as a first-time filmmaker. But I'm glad people are responding to it.
And I think you should be glad, because I think something that this film has that a lot of horror movies don't have, and trust me, I get sent a lot of horror movies my way, because it is a genre of film that's really accessible to a lot of filmmakers, especially first-time filmmakers. And your film has emotional stakes that are palpable. I myself am a father of 2 boys, and anything that deals with the death of a child, I think, depending on how filmmakers approach it, can be done in an exploitative way, but the way that you guys did it just really captured that grief really well. And I think that really comes across in the movie. And that's why I said in my intro, it's just as much a movie about parenthood as it is about anything else, in the realm of the genre that you're dealing with. And I think that's a really strong thing on your part. So I just wanted to say congratulations to that, because I think you guys really hit the nail on the head there. And I think the performances are terrific as well. And let's talk about Lisa Kay. She plays the character of Hannah. And what I really liked about her performance was that it was really a balancing act, because she's playing a grieving mother, but she's also playing a character kind of like on the edge of self-destruction throughout the movie. And I thought she did really do a terrific act in getting that balance right. How early was Lisa cast in the film? Did you know much about her work beforehand? And was she someone that, a person of her stature, was that someone you were thinking of working with in your first feature film?
I stumbled across Lisa, and she's married to a friend of mine who's a lovely producer, and I had no idea that she was that good. And she was just sort of hanging out in Brisbane, sort of doing the odd bits and pieces that she does voiceover wise, and the odd little role here and there. But I just sort of said, listen, after speaking with her, I wrote this short film for International Missing Children's Day for the Australian Federal Police a couple of years back. Uh-huh. And I said, could you just play this little role for me? I know you don't do commercials, but this isn't really a commercial. It's an awareness film. It's for a good cause. And she read the script and came down and did it. And she just came on set and just blew me away from the second we called action. And I don't know, like I knew I had to do something more with her, and I pretty much wrote Sweet River around her, like as the lead. I didn't really consider anybody else. I purposely didn't go back and look at any of her other work, because I didn't want it to affect what I was doing with her character in the writing stages, and I just wanted to have this air of ignorance around me and her relationship, because we were building this story from grassroots, and she's gone through some pretty heavy stuff in her own personal life that I knew from meeting her that she was just going to take herself straight to that point, and she did. And because she's such a classically trained actress, she just has these ways to get herself into that mode. And I don't know, there's so many times I was just bawling my eyes out watching her cry, and I totally bought it. I bought into it. I was honored to have her on set. She's a real talent. Really amazing.
Also great in the film is Martin Sachs, and a lot of people, of course, in Australia know Martin from a lot of his work in TV, especially in the 90s with Blue Heelers and such. In this movie, he's almost unrecognizable. And that leads me to ask, when he is approached to do the film and he agrees, do you talk about look of character? Does he have ideas about what the character will look like? Big bushy beard, a huge kind of glasses. Is that something that he really comes to you and says, mate, this is what I'm thinking for this character of John? What do you think? And you kind of work on that from the ground up as well?
Absolutely. Marty's at that age where Marty can just be Marty and say what he wants in terms of his character development. Those ideas, the beard and the glasses were all Marty. All I gave Marty was the limp. And the limp was purposely designed for his inability to catch Simpkins chasing Max in that final wrap up. So I hope I don't spoil it for anyone.
No, should be cool.
But yeah, it's that was it from me. And Marty was like, "Oh, I want to do this and I want to do that," and I was totally into it. We talked about wardrobe, we talked about facial hair, we talked about the glasses, and I loved everything that he'd suggested. And we're not too far from the location where Marty and I live. I met Marty at the gym one day. I literally walked up to him and said, "I've got this film. I really want you to be in it." He didn't really. He knew who I was, but I'm nobody in the feature film world. Or the television world. So it was kind of really lovely that he didn't treat me like that. And he was like, yeah, you know what, let's talk about it. And we did. And I started sending him some stuff and he reacted really well. And, as I said, like he just owned the role, made that character his own. And it was just so fun to see how it developed. And the crazy thing is I'd written like some of the end scenes. I've expanded them a lot. And there's a scene where he's on the floor after Lisa is attacked and he sits on the floor next to her and he basically spills his guts and they have it out. And I don't know, like I'd written that scene really early on in the piece, and watching him perform it with Lisa was such a big moment for me, because it was just so nice to see something play out on your monitor exactly the way you'd imagine it when you were writing it. And yeah, both those actors were just I don't know, it was just so much fun. It was just so fun. It was the whole reason why I persevered trying to become a director my whole life, just to have those little moments, and that was a really special one for sure.
I'm a big proponent as setting as a character. And I thought that the town of Billings, that's a fictional town as well, isn't it, Justin?
Yeah. The actual town it's set in is a place called Condon in the Tweed Valley, and we just obviously gave it a different name. But yeah, it's an interesting little sugar mill town on the Tweed Valley Way. Yeah.
And what is really interesting about that, you just mentioned it then, the sugarcane fields. And, I've watched pretty much every Australian horror movie, and they've been set in, the usual places, the outback, bushland, etc. I don't think I've ever seen one set in, like, with the tall grass, kind of like what you have in this movie. I mean, it's a very American horror thing, really, that kind of setting. Was it always your intention to find a place with something like that and use it in your film, or was it that you came across that location and then you had to tweak the script a bit to kind of include that in there? Because I think it was used really well.
Yeah, no, it's a bit of both. It's It's what would I say? It's kind of it's been something that I've been like driving through cane fields a lot, like living in Byron Bay. Every time you go to the airport, that's what happens. And to be honest, I just put my practical location scouting head on, and I would drive, and I'd come home and write. I'd let the location inform the script, and I kept driving and writing and photographing and driving at night through the harvest time of year, where a lot of the fields are sort of segregated by the sugar mill. Wherever the harvester is, they burn the fields at night, a day or two before they're harvested. And I just saw these fields alight, and I was like, if we can tailor the story to culminate in the third act around cane burn, then we just might have a film on our hands that looks way bigger than what we can afford. So I basically tailored the entire story around a burn conclusion, and then obviously got in bed with the right farmers to be able to ride off the back of one of their burns and try and wedge it into our shooting schedule.
Something that works really well in a film as well. And, it's interesting. I'm 311 episodes in, and this is the first time I could talk to a filmmaker about this, and that's aerial cinematography through the use of drones. And I know that you yourself have a business where you sell kind of drone technology, and I know you've used it in like your documentary work. But in the feature film work, when you're working with actors, etc., is there a difference in the way do you approach that kind of use of that technology in your movie, or is it similar to what you might do with your documentary stuff? Because there's a great actually scene in a movie where you follow Martin as he leaves his home. He jumps in his ute into kind of like you can just see like that really great kind of aerial shot as it goes up over the cane fields with the red lights and all that. A great shot there. Like doing something like that, is that something that is you approach that differently working with an actor in a feature film as opposed to a documentary?
Yeah, definitely. Drones are obviously a great tool, storytelling tool for establishing shots, and arguably used incorrectly quite a lot. And Simon Baker was a director that I was lucky enough to work on his film Breath.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, that great film, that one.
Yeah, and I worked on the surf unit for Simon, and I did some aerials for Simon in the film, and he was like, I don't want it to be a drone shot. I don't want the audience to think about where the camera is. I just want the shot to be an aerial, like it's a huge tower in the air, and it's locked off, and that's what it does. And I don't know, it just made me reconsider my approach to aerials, and I really wanted the heli guys that I work with. I helped form that company years ago. Have developed this handoff system where we hand off from land to air, and that's what we used in that particular shot that we're talking about there. And I really loved it, and I wanted to use it, and I wanted to work out a way that I could use it in a place in the film that made sense for the story. It wasn't just a cool shot for cool shot's sake. It was, I wanted the audience to persevere the same way Marty the same way John Drake had to persevere to go find his wife a couple of nights a week, where he has to get out of bed, has to get in his car, and he has to drive out to somewhere in the fields, wherever she is, out there walking, looking for their daughter. And I wanted it to be long, and I wanted it to be arduous because that's what this guy has to do. And I was like, okay, well, for it to do that, it still has to be interesting enough for the audience not to just turn off, and it needs to show scale. So we designed this handoff, and I'd had a couple of handoffs. So there's a handoff in the intro, and there's a handoff, basically at that moment. And I really wanted to use them in the right way to inform the story, and I believed it did. And I don't know, like I love drones for that. Like they give the audience that sense of place, and that particular shot goes from the bedroom up to above the fields, and then we cut literally back down onto the back of his ute when he finds it. So the audience kind of know exactly what's happening, even though it's pitch black and the only thing that's lighting anything are the headlights. And I thought, I don't know, I just thought that was really cool, and I was really happy with the way that turned out.
Oh, it was a really cool shot and something I like immediately took to. I really wanted to ask you about. Speaking of new technologies, so the movie is available now on Netflix. It's actually tagged as a Netflix original, which I know you're very proud of as well. And the thing about this year, with everything that's going on with COVID and closing of cinemas and such, streaming has really come to the fore as kind of like, I don't know if it has replaced cinema, probably hasn't, but there's so many things happening now in regards to the landscape of filmmaking and distribution. I don't know if you saw that Warner Brothers made an announcement that all their big feature films that's released next year will also concurrently be on their streaming platforms at the same time. Now that you have your own first feature film on Netflix and you're seeing the fruits of that, and I think it's a perfect type of platform for your movie because it's a really intimate film, and I think it needs an intimate setting really as well to really help get its the texture and points across. Do you think that this is the way of the future now? Do you think that streaming or concurrent streaming along with cinema releases is the way that a lot of people will go now in getting their movies out there? Or do you think that when people get more comfortable to get outside post-vaccine, that cinema will rise to the top again?
I think it'll go back to the way it was. I hope it does. I'm so excited that Sweet River's on Netflix, and I believe all streaming platforms are so great because people these days are so time poor, and they just need to be able to watch films that they want to watch whenever they want to watch them, because that's just the world we're in these days. But the reason why streamers even exist in the first place is because of cinemas, and because of movies and content. So it's where it all came from. It's the reason why we got into this business, because we love going to the movies. We love the smell of popcorn and the chairs and the way the curtains come back, and the surround sound and all those things. It's the reason why I got into filmmaking. I even used to just get so excited when I'd see the Paramount logo sequence come up at the start of a film. I'd be like, right, I'm about to be told a story. I'm in a locked room. No one can bother me. Phones are off. It's just me and the story. And I think that's just magic. And I really hope cinemas, continue to operate consistently with streaming. I really do. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows. But I reckon, once we get through whatever we're going through right now, I can't see why it wouldn't go back to the way it was.
So for everyone listening, Sweet River out now on Netflix, starring Lisa Kay and Martin Sachs, directed by Justin McMillan, who I just spoke to right now. And Justin, look, congratulations with the movie. I think it's a really terrific film, and I know it's your feature film as well, so double congrats on that. And I can't wait to see what you do with your future releases as well. And once again, congratulations, and thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Matt. I really appreciate it. And take care. Speak to you in the next one.